I don't get every single thing on this channel exactly right, but boy, sometimes I really can call my shots. This is going to be another episode of Paul's Right About Everything because it's revealed what viewers of this channel already knew, that Russian rocket scientists are fueling North Korea's surge in missile technology in exchange, of course, for North Korean soldiers fighting and dying on the front lines of Kursk. We're going to talk all about this, plus Ukraine's nasty surprise for Russian FPV pilots and some really troubling tweets from, or X's, or whatever the stink calling it now, from the vice president. We're going to break all that down. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's crack into it. Okay, so this is from the Institute for the Study of War, revealing, again, something we've suspected for a long time, that it wasn't just a random coincidence that North Korea experienced a huge surge in the capabilities of its missile systems. At the same time, they began providing troops to the Russian armed forces. That's because, of course, Russia is likely providing drone and missile tech to North Korea in exchange for those North Korean troops fighting in Kursk. This is from a Japanese news outlet citing multiple sources in North Korea and Russia, reporting that part of the agreement was that Russia is going to help North Korea develop and mass produce various types of drones in exchange for North Korean forces supporting Russia's war effort against Ukraine, right? And I point this out because, again, the beneficiaries of this are actually everybody, right? This is everybody wins except for, of course, the West and democracies. The reason is that, of course, Russia says, listen, we're not going to help North Korea develop nuclear weapons, which it already has, but they fear that North Korean nuclear tests would actually strain relations further with the United States. Maybe. Again, it's hard to say with this current administration, and they're seemingly not really all that worried about North Korea. But it would also complicate relations with the PRC, who are pretty staunchly against the nuclearization of, or sort of the expansion of nuclear weapons, which makes sense. When you have nuclear weapons, the last thing you want is everyone to have them. Exclusivity is its own reward. Now, what I think is most interesting here is that they are going to develop the missile systems, which we've seen for some time, but also that the Russians are going to assist the North Koreans in mass producing it, right? Because it's one thing, the Russians are very good actually at building high-end, highly sophisticated like fighter jets and other technology, but they're terrible at mass producing them, right? And Russian engineering is quite good, but Russian logistics is as bad as their engineers are good. And so Russia would love to do, rather, is to see North Korea actually able to affect this mass production of missiles and drones. Why? Because Russia actually struggles quite mightily with mass production of its weapon systems. And so being able to sit there and say, North Korea, you give us soldiers and we will give you this tech, right? And so it seems like North Korea's win is getting the tech. But actually, North Korea wins on both sides of the deal because their soldiers conducting these combat operations, they are going to gain extremely valuable battlefield experience. In fact, it seems likely that this 10,000-man contingent, right, they're going to continually need to be plussed up from more and more troops. But in the process, they're going to learn and refine and develop a highly sophisticated understanding of warfare in the modern age. That means that they're going to take this 10,000-man army and they're going to, when the war ends, send them back to North Korea. And what they're going to do is turn all of North Korea into a modern fighting force, right? Whatever that looks like in the Russian model. And so North Korea says, wow, we're going to win on both ends of this deal. But Russia also wins on both ends of this deal, right? It gets troops, sure, which are awesome. But if you can train North Korea to mass produce drones and missiles, what you also have is an entire factory, a whole country that is willing to be your factory. Because remember, North Korea is going to mass produce these drones for its own military, sure, no doubt about it. But what it's also going to do is sell these arms overseas. And what you may be thinking to yourself is, Paul, who's going to buy North Korean weapons, right? The U.S. sells weapons abroad to almost every country in the NATO space, but for countries that can't get NATO munitions, like, well, Russia, having North Korea in being able to mass produce drones and missiles is going to be a huge benefit to Russia, particularly because you may note that a lot of Russian factories actually get targeted by the Ukrainians. But the Ukrainians are unwilling or unable to escalate this war into North Korea directly and target North Korean facilities. As a result, Russia gets a safe space where it can build its drones and push its and develop its missile tech. So everybody wins from this kind of deal, right? This is a sort of trade deal and collaboration and cooperation that we often talk about that the U.S. actually has with its allies. Now, what I want to point out is, of course, you guys know that Russia, they don't always have a great time. And in fact, it seems like Ukraine might be taking a playbook from the Israeli intelligence services, book of tricks. But before we talk about that, of course, I wanted to say that you guys are going to notice in this channel, right? I'm willing to be critical of just about every single government that's involved in this. The United States, the Russians, North Koreans, the Ukrainians, almost everybody. I have a bone to pick with them. The reason I can do that is because I don't take money from major media outlets. I don't take money from governments. I have you guys backing me up. That's why I have Combat Vet News, right? This functions like Patreon, where twice a week I review the uncensored combat footage, oftentimes stuff that is sent to me straight from the front lines by the units themselves. And we do a deep dive analysis of everything. Plus, it's got an archive of hundreds of videos going back to the start of the war. It's probably one of the most extensive archives of combat footage from this conflict. And because, again, it's my site, it's self-hosted, you're never going to have some sort of YouTube terms of service come in and remove it from existence. And so if you want to support me, right, any one of these tiers is going to do it. The link is in the description. Of course, if you want those shout outs and access to Q&As, that's for those higher tiers. But thank you guys that do support me. Okay. So a Russian commander, Ukraine reports, that a brigade commander was killed in a cafe bombing, killed by, quote, a parcel bomb, right? This was the commander of a Russian missile brigade who was killed after opening a Ukrainian-made parcel bomb. Ukraine said that it eliminated the commander by allegedly concealing plastic explosives in drone goggles, right? So this brigade commander, either symbolically or literally, wanted to play with an FPV drone, right? And who doesn't? They seem pretty fun. He's come to his severe injuries following the explosion last month, so it seems like he was killed some time ago, or he was injured some time ago and finally died. The attack, of course, retaliation for his forces' alleged involvement in a Ukrainian cafe attack 2 years ago that resulted in 59 deaths. The commander opened the bomb, and he got unalived, right? Ukraine has labeled him a war criminal and accused him of direct involvement in an incident where an Iskander missile was fired at a cafe during a memorial service in Kharkiv, killing 59. This is right. And here's the funny thing. In a statement, Russia's UN representative didn't say this was a tragic misstep or an accident. They didn't say that, oh, this was just something that happens in war zones. No, instead, the UN representative said that the funeral was an event for, quote, high-ranking nationalists and attended by, quote, many of his, I can't say that word, but NAZI accomplices. So really, just really doubling down by the old, doubling down by the Russian government. You can always count on them to do it. Now, what's more interesting is these explosive goggles, right? FPV drone goggles loaded with explosives isn't just a one-off. It's not limited to just this targeted attempt at this individual's life. No, in fact, just like the IDF's beeper operation, in which explosive-laden beepers were actually sold to Hezbollah and then distributed among Hezbollah's rank and file, including many of their leaders, including some troubling figures like, you might recall, the ambassador to Iran. I think it was Lebanon's ambassador to Iran, right? These pagers were laden with explosives. Then when the Israelis went after Hezbollah, they blew them all up. And the Ukrainians likely looked at this and said, damn, that's a good idea. And so what they did is actually did the same basic scheme where they inserted explosives into FPV drone goggles, and they exploded, right, with just 10 to 15 grams of plastic explosives Detonation occurred when the goggles are turned on, right? But remember, if you're taking, it doesn't take much because these FPV drone goggles, they're literally on your head, dude. So 15 grams of plastic explosives is all it takes, right? Because, it's pretty brutal, right? It is a brutal, but again, why would you put on FPV drone goggles, particularly models used by the Russian military, if you're not planning on using it as a member of the Russian military? So, some pretty scary stuff there. Now, what's also interesting, of course, Trump is saying that he is repeatedly speaking to Putin on the phone, and that he says, wow, Putin wants to see people stop dying in the Ukraine war. Wow, who'd have thought? Now, of course, this is one of those statements that every politician is going to make because everybody's like, it's bad to die in war. But the catch is, it's sort of like saying, man, it's like a boxer saying, man, I hate punching my opponent. They go, well, you could just quit the match and walk away. And he goes, no, I want to win the match. I just want my opponent to stop trying to punch me back. This boxing match would be a lot easier if my opponent just gave up when I punched him the first time. And so this kind of generic attitude is just the fact that it's being reported as news is kind of annoying. And the fact that Trump is like, wow, he agrees with me that dying is bad. Okay, dudes. Okay. Even the New York Post is kind of like, all right. Right. When asked about how often he's been speaking to Putin, Trump says, quote, I'd better not say, which is kind of weird from a president, but I get it. You know, some discussions are best done with a high level of operational security. But he said he believes Putin does care about the killing on the battlefield, and he wants to see people stop dying. Also, a classic Trumpian says, all those dead people, young, beautiful people. They're like your kids, 2 million of them, and for no reason. That's fair, right? Trump said he totally has a plan to end the war. It's totally concrete, but I don't know. And this is something that we've talked about that the deal of the Trump administration seems, the leaked rumors are that it's pretty incomplete, right? It involves basically Russia giving up nothing, achieving large swaths of what it wanted to. It also effectively is a defeat for NATO, given that NATO said that Ukrainian membership would always be on the table, and then Ukrainian membership in NATO, it gets closed. So if you're the international community asking yourself, man, is NATO strong enough to protect itself or protect its allies? Your answer is going to be no, because, one European country with an economy the size of Belgium was able to get NATO to back away and back off one of its policy positions. So a troubling potential deal, again, but it's leaked, right? Leaked rumors, incomplete deals. It's unfair to judge peace deals off of leaks. But, there's definitely some holes in it, so to speak. But that's not what really has been, bothering me particularly. What I do want to point out is some very troubling statements by the vice president. And he gets some things wrong, and he shouldn't, right? Because he's a former Marine. J.D. Vance tweeted, if a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. This is just factually incorrect. I can tell you that the lawyers, and by extension, the judges, weigh in all the time on the conduct of military operations. Why? Because judges decide if a crime has been committed. For example, let's say I was to say, hey, part of my plan in this military operation is to just shoot one of my soldiers in the face before we start, because that's going to motivate the other soldiers to not turn back. Sound familiar? Sounds like a kind of Russian type of tactic, right? Well, in the United States, that soldier might say, hey, you can't do that. Or a judge may even come in and say, yo, dude, no, you can't just plan and operate this way. Let's say a U.S. general is to say, actually, my plan for this operation is to go into U.S. cities and tie up military-age men and drag them off. That would be, I mean, again, this is something that you would see in like a Russian military situation. Well, a judge would be the person who would come in and say, you can't do that, right? Because they are the arbiters of what is and is not legal. And if you try to do something illegal, that will stop you, right? Look at all the Navy SEAL teams who got charged with war crimes, and those judges came in and said, listen, dude, you cannot kill civilians wantonly, even if you think it has military value, right? So a judge telling a general that their conduct is illegal is absolutely 100% what a judge does. It's literally an inversion of reality, right? If a judge tried to command the attorney general in how to use their discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. 100% backwards. 100% backwards. If an attorney general says, let's say attorney general wakes up and goes, you know what? I'm going to use my prosecutorial discretion. I'm going to prosecute a completely innocent person. I don't like them. My neighbor in the HOA, right? The attorney general wakes up and goes, my neighbor, this dude, he drives me crazy. He constantly makes fun of me. His car is really ugly. He painted his house a color I don't like. I'm going to prosecute him. Well, a judge is going to come in and say, yo, dude, you're the attorney general. You don't have the right to do this. You can't just prosecute someone because they painted their house a color you don't like. So yeah, that's what a judge does. This is not something that is unique to the American experience. This is a function of every country with the rule of law. Judges come in and decide if someone has overstepped their bounds. A local government, a state government, a federal government. That's what it is. And so now he's saying, well, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. This is like self-evidently true, right? But like this word legitimate is doing all of the work. Because how do you determine whether or not the executive has power? That it does. That is the job of the judiciary. You say, well, wait, what if the judiciary simply just, what's stopping them from taking over the whole country with their activist attitude? Well, two things. One is the appeal system, that you can continually appeal a decision all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is checked by their appointment by federal officials. So again, you have something where the Supreme Court, who has a large number of conservative justices, if they tell the executive branch, dude, you can't do this, then that is it. That the check on their power was the fact that the president appoints them with the consent of the Senate. That's it. So like this whole thing, and here's the thing, J.D. Vance is a Yale-trained lawyer. He knows this is true. But then you have to ask yourself, why is he putting this sort of madness out? Why is he saying these things that are obviously not true? And my worry when I see a politician say these things is because this politician has designs on ignoring a pending court ruling, that they plan on simply ignoring the court's right to do these things. And that is really scary stuff. Because again, imagine, if you will, if, for example, the Supreme Court came in, put yourself in a different scenario, right? Remember, imagine something, the Biden administration saying student loan forgiveness. We're going to just forgive everyone's student loans, public and private. If you collect on a student loan, we're going to put you in jail. Well, somebody sues and says, well, this is illegal. You can't do this, right? And the Supreme Court said, yeah, dude, they are correct. You cannot simply renege on your commitments. You can't simply forgive student loans that aren't yours. You can't do this. And the Biden administration, imagine if they had said, you know what, F off, we're going to do it. Judges are overstepping their bounds. We've decided, the executive branch have decided that we know whether or not we can do this. We've decided, we looked at ourselves, we investigated ourselves, we actually found that we can do this thing. If you say, man, that would be a problem, then you have to say that this other set of logic used by Vice President Vance is equally flawed and equally troubling, right? So again, this could just be somebody tweeting out some bullshit. But again, a Yale-trained lawyer is not just going to like pop off the cuff and tweet out some crazy shit. So this to me is one of the more troubling things that I've seen. And it also troubles me that Elon Musk, right? Again, a special government employee is calling for the impeachment of a federal judge who said that he did something wrong, right? That the Treasury Department should block service to anyone other than civil servants with a need to access to perform its duties, right? That the order specifically prohibits special government employees and those detailed from outside the department from getting access to those systems. Why? Because the U.S. Treasury system is a pretty sensitive thing, right? And Elon Musk said a corrupt judge protecting corruption, with providing no evidence, right? Again, so you've got to, if you say someone's a corrupt judge, show us the corruption, show us the money he took from someone, or the fact that he was paid to rule against you. Because again, it's not unhinged to say, listen, remember, everyone's paid via the Treasury system. CIA employees, sanctioned Russian, like anyone who's there is paid via the system. So it's okay for the government to sit there and go, this system contains some classified data, and you have to have the appropriate classifications to do it. You have to be in the correct role to do it. That's called need to know, right? It's really, really pretty simple. And again, if the judge says, listen, these people need more clearance than they currently have to do it, then there's your answer. Or it could just be as simple, again, usually is to sit there and so submit your questions to the Treasury, to someone who has access, and they'll give you the information. This is extremely routine and easily worked around. So the fact that instead of that, you have someone like Musk saying you need to impeach this judge now. Well, again, Elon Musk does not get to impeach judges. It has to be done via the process outlaid by law. So unfortunately, he needs Congress to do it, right? Again, if he's really unhappy, guess what else he can do? He can appeal this judge's decision, though it's likely just an injunction pending the outcome of a case. So this kind of thing, again, is really troubling when you sit there, get a judgment from a judge, and then you go, this judge is so incorrect that that he should be impeached, right? This judge is corrupt. This judge is a criminal. Do you see how that would be a problem? Like, imagine if you get a DUI or another crime, and then you walk out of the courtroom and you tweet, this judge is a criminal. This judge is corrupt. This judge needs to be debenched and disbarred, stripped of his robe. How do you think that's going to go for you? Do you think that's a good decision? Do you think that's a smart way to deal with a court? Do you think it's even legal to accuse a judge of a crime with no evidence, right? It's not a great one. Now, I want to point out, for example, again, I am an Elon Musk hater right now because he seems to be shitting on the Constitution, and by defunding and shutting down agencies that he doesn't have the legal authority to do, right? Congress funds these agencies, so Congress can defund the agencies. Again, the budget says that USAID has to exist. And the USAID has to execute on these programs. So if you have a problem with them, what you need to do is get Congress to act. But that's not the same thing as saying Elon Musk is wrong about there being problems with USAID. And just like Elon Musk is not wrong about Radio Free Europe and Voice of America, right? I think this is a classic example of redundancy because Radio Free Europe and VOA, these are and I like their reporting. Their reporting is good, but they are funded by the U.S. taxpayer, and they were originally conceived as a news outlet, a way to get true news about the world over the Iron Curtain, where the Soviets banned it. So they would broadcast and actually get radios to Eastern Bloc countries where people could then get access to real information about the outside world. The problem is, of course, that in the era of the internet, Radio Free Europe doesn't really make a ton of sense, right? This function could be done by a VPN, and that's it, just running a VPN service. And so I agree with shutting this thing down, but again, this is the problem, right? He says, Europe is free now, not counting the stifling bureaucracy. Nobody listens to them anymore. This is true. Their YouTube videos are really low. Their views are unbelievably low. And it's not radical left people talking to themselves. But it is, in fact, the journalists sometimes talking to themselves. And $1 billion a year is a lot of money, particularly for a state-owned media outlet. Again, I have yet to see anything that indicated to me that Radio Free Europe or Radio Liberty is full of far-left activists. But again, I do agree that it's a relic of the past and government-paid media outlets, right? The fact that they actually get all this money from the government is actually kind of a problem because look at RT, right? Do we trust RT on this channel? No. We've caught RT and Sputnik News lying through their teeth all the time. and they're funded by the Russian government. So we can just take them and transition them into the garbage. And so Radio Europe, Radio Free Liberty, I know that actually sometimes their reporting is pretty good. And sometimes their reporting is even critical of the US government, right? Even the White House. But the problem is that it doesn't matter because the money they receive taints the independence of their reporting. And it is better than nothing. And it's certainly better than what the people in, say, Soviet-era Poland were receiving. But it is not continuing to fulfill its core mission. And I think it is, torching $1 billion a year, right? It still tries to put free media into places like Venezuela. But again, we know that Russia has so many VPNs. They have so many VPNs. VPN use is so popular in Russia that they have access to the they have plenty of unfettered access to free media. So again, this is not Elon Musk is wrong. This is Elon Musk, in a lot of cases, is doing things the wrong way. I think sometimes he's also wrong. He's about as skilled at cutting government agencies as he is at playing Path of Exile, which is to say he's not really that good at it. But sometimes he's right. And again, I agree with him on this, but his made-up role is not legally able to dismantle Radio Free Liberty and Radio Europe. So again, that's all I had for today, guys. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. That makes a huge difference. Join me over on combatvetnews.com. I hope I'll see you. And thanks to Bill Collier, Robert Colburn, guys, Martin, Eugene Crest, Chris Gorsuch, Francis Karas, L90, and Petch Taru, all of our Lieutenant tier members. I really could not do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.